Judge mocks young farmer in court, shocked to learn he's a genius attorney in disguise. It was the mud on his boots that drew the first laugh. Not the kind of hearty laugh that invites others in, but the sharp, dismissive chuckle of someone who has already decided who you are before you've even spoken. Judge Malcolm Hargrove leaned back in his ornate leather chair, peering down over his glasses at the young man standing at the defendant's table. Dressed in worn jeans, a flannel shirt, and a straw-colored hat tucked under his arm, Elijah Boone looked wildly out of place in the wood-paneled courtroom. The murmurs in the gallery weren't much better. "This isn't a barn," one lawyer whispered. "He smell like cows to you too," came another, snorting into his sleeve. Elijah said nothing. He stood with the calm of someone who had spent years waiting for crops to grow, storms to pass, and engines to crank again after dying in the middle of the field. The charge against him? Trespassing and property damage, accusations brought by Sterling Agritech, a corporation trying to swallow every inch of farmland in Greenwood County, including Elijah's family's generational plot. Judge Hargrove raised an eyebrow. "And you're representing yourself, Mr. Boone? Declined the county's offer for a public defender?" "Yes, Your Honor," Elijah replied, voice steady, unhurried. "I'd prefer to speak for myself." The courtroom shifted uncomfortably, sensing a train wreck in slow motion. "Well," Hargrove sighed, clearly amused, "this should be educational." Elijah's story wasn't what anyone expected. He didn't launch into emotional pleas or flustered objections. Instead, he pulled out a carefully compiled binder, flipping to the first tab. The land in question, he said, was missurveyed in 1972. This, he pointed to a faded map, shows the Boone family's rightful boundary, which includes the acre where Sterling Agritech claims damage. Judge Hargrove blinked. "I cross-referenced the county's registry records with state-level land grants. Pages 3 through 7 detail the discrepancies. My great-grandfather never signed over that land. It's still ours." He walked the courtroom through lease agreements, environmental violations committed by Sterling, and a clause buried in a 1981 zoning document that voided any corporate claims after 5 years of non-use. With each sentence, the smirks faded. Whispers turned to silence. Even the corporate attorney, a sleek man with a $2,000 watch and a smirk that hadn't moved in a decade, began shifting uncomfortably. "Wait a minute," the judge finally said, leaning forward. How do you know all this?" Elijah gave a soft, almost shy smile. "I studied law, sir. Harvard. Graduated top of my class. Passed the bar in 2 states." The courtroom gasped. "You, what?" Judge Hargrove blinked, stunned. "Then why the boots? The flannel? Why come in like a farmer?" Elijah finished for him gently. "Because that's what I am. My father died 2 years ago. I came back home to run the land. Never intended to go back to courtrooms. But when Sterling started harassing my neighbors, buying up land through threats and legal tricks, I couldn't stay quiet. If I didn't stand up, who would?" The silence was now deafening. No one laughed anymore. In the back of the courtroom, an older woman stood and clapped once, then again. Others followed. Not mockingly, but with respect. The judge cleared his throat, visibly rattled. He called for order, but his voice was unsteady. Elijah sat down, calm as a still lake. The verdict came swiftly. Not only was Elijah found innocent, but the judge also ordered an investigation into Sterling Agritech's property dealings. A week later, lawsuits from other farmers began pouring in, each one filed by Elijah Boone on behalf of his neighbors. He never charged a single dollar. Instead, he rotated between the fields and the courthouse. By morning, he fed the livestock. By afternoon, he fought for families drowning in debt or bullied by large corporations. They started calling him the farmer advocate. Judge Hargrove, once so dismissive, called Elijah into chambers one afternoon. "I misjudged you," he said. I saw dirt and forgot to look for depth. I saw boots and forgot to listen. Elijah just smiled. We all have dirt, Judge. Some of us just don't mind wearing it. Epilogue. A year later, Greenwood County saw its largest legal settlement in decades. Sterling Agritech paid millions in damages and relinquished hundreds of acres back to local farmers. Elijah used his share to open a community legal clinic, for free consultation and defense of rural families. The walls of the clinic were paneled in repurposed barn wood. His boots still tracked in mud. But beside the door hung a plaque, gifted by the same judge who once laughed at him. To Elijah Boone, a man who reminded us that brilliance wears many faces. And sometimes, mud-caked boots. Sometimes, the world won't recognize your worth at first glance. But the truth of who you are, rooted in compassion, grounded in purpose, will always rise through the noise. Kindness doesn't need a title. And justice, when carried by steady hands, can change the course of many lives. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They just might be heroes in disguise.